Tuned into Mid Morning Talk with me, your host Miriam Mia, and now I'm going to be speaking to a lawyer, Magdalene Moonsamy, and she's an expert in cyber law. And we're going to be discussing the implications of the new cyber bill, which was aligning South Africa's cybersecurity laws with the rest of the world. But however, what it what's its implication for us? Ordinary South Africans. So, yes, we could be found wanting in terms of the law, or could be even prosecuted or charged for that matter. For example, if we send such messages of to those that messages that which would incite violence or damage to property, threatening persons with violence or damage to property, those which contain an intimate image sent without the subject's consent. Uh, Other offenses include cyber fraud, forgery, extortion, and theft of property. So, yes, a lot for us to be cognizant and mindful when sending messages and interacting and communicating on social media. But let's welcome Magdalene Moonsamy and let her explain to us exactly what we should be looking out for and being cognizant on. So let me just check if we have Magdalene. Good morning, Magdalene, and welcome to Salam Media.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Mariam, for having me.
Yes, so now it will really have to apply our minds, especially when one is rather highly irritated, agitated, or upset when sending messages. Sometimes you have a spat, and then emotions take over, and you're angered, and you say things or you forward things that you know what, in hindsight you shouldn't have. But this time, yeah, it's not just regret or remorse that you'll have, but you could be charged under this new law. So please tell us about what this bill, the implications of the Cybercrimes Bill that was promulgated into law.
Okay. Now, what you know is that this has been long coming since 2015. And one of the challenges that you face in a new dimension of the social media in respect of international crimes, hacking, for example, there are so many aspects that one has to consider because our lives, especially under the pandemic, have been subject to so much of social media interaction and media interaction over our telephones, our laptops, etc. And what then happens is that you have a lot of activities that are taking place in the cyber world where there is hacking and there is interception. There is also detection, investigation of international crimes. There is, like you said, just for a layman's perspective, where somebody is harassing or threatening them, etc., connecting through their social media, which is indirectly hacking or trying to follow. I mean, I had a case a couple of years ago where an individual had gotten into another person's Facebook, and we had to communicate with Facebook and Google in order to get case numbers. And we didn't have the act in place at that time. And what then happens is that we've now cross-referenced into a space of the international world because our access into international activities becomes so much easier. We've got friends all over the world on social media, and we've got access to the world just on a phone or a laptop. And in these instances, it becomes very difficult to raise these issues on an international platform because we don't have a linkage in terms of the international space. And now we have that access. So that's the one aspect of the act that makes it easier for us to hold accountable those activities within the cyberspace that cause intervention or interception of our private lives and also that of state security. The other aspect that one must consider in terms of what the Act is saying is that the police will ultimately, or the police service, as the Act puts it, will have ultimate control over data and will have to create a central database so that these things can be monitored. The reality, Mariam, is that this is a very expensive and financially consuming exercise. And if you can imagine, you go to a police station and you have to lodge a complaint. How long does it take you? And we don't have a centralized system where we can say that this is where our case is, or if you've got a case of harassment. Now we're dealing with cases that are in the cyberspace. And so that becomes a challenge because one has to then look for precedents in terms of South African law, but also what are the what is the other implications, that if there is an inciting of violence, the sentence then is 15, can be up to 15 years or 50,000 rand. It depends, I think, on the severity. So the scheduling of the offenses in terms of whether it is, extortion, whether it is fraud, forgery, whether it is inciting of violence, or whether it's actually a state security threat. So these are some of the issues that we are facing. I mean, on a daily basis now, you find that there are apps that are out there that are able to pick up conversations between individuals if they have given their phones to a partner, etc. So the level of what is accessible in terms of personal information and personal data becomes a very conflicted space. And so these are the challenges that the legal space is now facing in terms of what is the nature of the crime. Where you would in the past have an individual who would hurl an insult at you, etc., and you open a charge of criminal injuria, now that these things are able to be captured on a WhatsApp or a social media platform, then that ability of the police to detect, to monitor, and to understand the severity of the potential crime, cybercrime that may be inflicted against a person, then becomes very necessary. Because we're living in a world, we're living in a space, a global space, where we are being compromised on a daily basis.
Magdalene, can you please just stay on the platform? We need to take a short break and then we will continue.
Okay.
Thanks so much. We're going to go for a short break and we will resume with Magdalene Moonsamy.
We opened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious for everyone in the family. Wraps, chicken tikka, burgers, tender grills, mocktails, milkshakes, and so much more. Corporate and events catering available. Visit our social media pages for more info or call 031 209 0119. Kiki's, the Taste with Kick.
Breaking stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
Welcome back. You're tuned into Mid Morning Talk with me, your host, Mariam Mia, and we are talking to lawyer Magdalene Moonsamy regarding the new Cybercrimes Bill, which was promulgated into law and has many wide-reaching implications, as Magdalene was explaining. Magdalene, thank you and welcome back.
Thank you so much, Mariam. Thank you.
So what I need to understand is previously, before this has been promulgated into law, I mean, if you could lay a charge of somebody threatening you, extortion and that, but now, will this, if it happened in the cyberspace, will then this be an additional charge that somebody could be added, that this is now contravening the cybercrimes bill or something like this? So is this then an additional charge as well, in addition to, let's say, the conventional charges prior to this bill being promulgated into law?
Yes, Mariam. You see, the thing is, we've had the Electronics Communications and Transactions Act, which was able to then look at issues of finances, look at issues of electronic communications, where you could follow electronic communications, who was the source, who was the sender, for example, of an email or a communication. And now that fell short in terms of the global space, because it was a space that allowed us to interact, for example, for reasons of the Personal Information Act, issues of that nature. However, with this gives you an additional ability to say at this level, because so many of us are communicating with each other through social media, we can reach the world, or through Outlook, Zoom, etc. We have access to the world. And what you will find in many instances where people are, for example, having a webinar, you might find that somebody has breached in, or it's board meetings, etc. And those are the instances that we need to protect and be safe against, and protect the information dissemination that we are now potentially exposed to. So in the years in the past, there has been, there is the courts of harassment protection orders, but the courts could not have the capacity to deal with the regulation in terms of jurisdiction of cybercrime. So, for example, where women have been coerced into marriage through a social media platform of someone that they don't know, or there has been human trafficking, or there has been potential threats, detection of potential threats to state security, or there is what is referred to as cyberbullying. Remember that the Act will then start to consider and look at what are the violations and offenses that have been created through cyber exchanges and interactions. Because what you find in many instances, I heard you earlier on the Palestine issue, the issue of Western Sahara, for example, you have a very strong propaganda machinery that creates a perception on the one side and diminishes the other side. And this doesn't allow the opportunity for many people to exchange. So it creates an impression that, no, in actual fact, this is the status, which is why you have an international solidarity movement. But at the same level, there's a huge international risk and threat to the people that are in Gaza, the people that are in the West Bank, the people that are in the Western Sahara. And where you have elements that are out there, whether they are domestic and they may breach international law as a result of relations that have been built with such countries. So this is where the extension of the issue of cybercrime becomes so broad and becomes so, it becomes a refuge point for so many people who are vulnerable from cyberbullying, from all kinds of crimes and criminal activities, so that it can then be mitigated against.
And so you know what I was thinking about, especially when people are in relationships and when things are going good, they share certain intimate imagery, and where I'm leading with this question, and things like that. And once a relationship ends or gets soured, and it depends on the extent to which the breakup was not amicable, images then are sent through to everybody, all in sundry, and that, well, thus now will you have some sort of protection? Or sometimes you might be somewhere, people take photos of you, imagery of you without permission, and then they start circulating, and you might be in a compromising situation or position, and then you are extorted if it's not sent out. Will thus then offer that person some sort of protection? And what I'd like to know is there repercussions for people who just forward these messages? So you receive it, and then you decide, I'm sharing it on my WhatsApp platforms here, this image. So will there be any accountability for people who then forward such messages, besides you being the source and sending this out, about people who just forward without thinking? Will there be some repercussions for a person who does it? And also maybe for a person who is the admin of a group, will they have to take some sort of responsibility in terms of being an admin of a group?
Look, I think that one thing is clear, is that there is protection. The reality is that women need to start utilizing the protection that's available to them. Now, there's something called photoshopping. So you can simply just, for example, find your face on somebody else's body, and the body may not be clothed. Now, one must have a look at where is the source of the information. What is the source? That is why the issue around the police service for detection, monitoring, and controlling a database becomes very, very important, because the liability then is at which point did this individual or whomever it is initiated this process. And it's a very, very pivotal issue that you are raising, Mariam, because this is something that is affecting. I mean, there was a situation where there was child pornography, which is a cybercrime, that a person was watching at work and would then say that, but listen, I live with my old mother, and this is my entertainment, and feel absolutely no remorse about it. And what then has to happen is that this becomes part of the cybercrime, the principles within the act. So, of course, there will be recourse. There will be recourse against all individuals. It depends as well. You know, we're also in an age where the humiliation suffered outweighs the person's capacity to want to pursue a matter. And in many instances, that person becomes a victim of extenuated humiliation, extenuated perpetuation of the crime, of a social media or any kind of crime that's related to cybercrime. So it must be the prerogative of the individual to say, I've been subjected to this. How do I then ensure that I see this through until I have the same level of retribution if I was not placed in that position? And what we are finding now is that, you know, if individuals are in a space of that nature, even in the courts, you will find that there is already an easing from the Electronic Communication Act into the Cybercrime Act. So we've been anticipating the act. It's just the practicality of implementation of the act, Mariam.
And yeah, looking forward to chatting to you maybe in 6 months' time in terms of the application, and also I'm sure the first few cases in terms of this is going to be groundbreaking, and then we'll set the precedent going forward. So looking forward to chatting to you in the future to see how this plays out. But at least, like you say, we now know that we have some sort of protection against cyber bullying, cyber intimidation, as well as when people start extorting from you, cyber theft as well. There is some protection, and it's good to know we align internationally, because remember, cybercrime knows no boundaries, so there's no jurisdiction, so to speak. So looking forward to chatting to you in the future in terms of how actually this law in action in terms of protecting our rights, as well as getting perpetrators to face the might of the law, and ultimately justice to be served. Thank you for your time here on Salam Media. It has been absolutely educational and informative. Magdalene Moonsamy, attorney.
Thank you so much, Mariam.
We're going to go for let's go for a short break, and then we're going to be paying tribute to a beloved sister, Fatima Talia, from H4U organization, the late Fatima Talia.